great. Good.
All right, thanks. I didn't know the item number.
Oh, okay. All right, yeah.
All right, so open the meeting up again. All right, so bring the order of the regular meeting for the Natural Resource Committee on January 8th, 2020.
All right, first item up is our agenda analysis. Doug, take it away.
Well, do you want, I can hold off to the end in this case, and we can just go through our regular items if our regular meeting is opened up.
If you want to add something new to the agenda,
Okay, well,
or do you just want to talk about it?
I want to talk about it because there's going to be a commission meeting before we have our next.
Okay, all right.
And my opinion is this should have come before us.
Okay, all right.
The Forest Edge Apartments, as you know, was built on in a landslide area. It's built on what they call a SAG, and they've lost a couple buildings, and I guess some of them aren't occupied because of the conditions there, and the owners there want to drill wells into the soil there to take some of that water off of the area. That's coming before the next commission meeting, and I had written a...
Oh, that's on the agenda tonight, Doug.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, we added a revised agenda for this.
Oh, did I say...
Did I
miss it here?
To include it. It's item 7B.
Oh, excuse me, then I will keep my mouth shut.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I was going to circle back with you because I got your email, but I never circled back with you about it. So
Okay.
that's why we did the revised agenda.
Okay, so I don't...
So,
It's 7A, but...
Yeah, but it's down further.
Oh, okay.
S7.
yeah.
Oh,
So
all right, my apologies.
we're good. We'll be talking about that.
Cool.
So do we take the 5 minutes or not? You've already opened the meeting.
Yeah,
No, we're good. We can
keep going.
Yep. Election of officers.
Yeah.
So we have we have a quorum, so we can do this.
4 people, yeah.
Yeah.
Barely.
And we will need to elect at a minimum a chair and vice chair.
I'm going to move for Nancy to be our chair.
I second that.
Okay. Do I need to call the vote? Doug Neely,
Aye.
Trent Warnes,
Aye.
Mike Hamilton,
Aye.
Nancy Brush.
I guess I.
Great.
I'm supposed to nominate the
Congratulations.
people around here.
All right. Vice chair.
I'll nominate Mike Hamilton.
Second.
Okay. Doug,
Aye.
Trent,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Nancy.
Hi.
Oh, great. Okay.
Quick and easy.
Yeah, that was. Congratulations, guys. That's exciting. When do you want to assume the gavel responsibility?
I can't remember the meetings. Oh, no.
You want to start now? Or?
No.
Okay. All right.
I can't even talk.
All right. All right. Well, let's go and move on to item 4 if you want. Minutes.
Approval of minutes from February,
Yep.
March, and April of 2019, it looks like.
Yep.
Come on.
I've checked these for major typos. I didn't see any, and omissions. I didn't see any. So, plus we have the video recordings as well. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. Does anybody want to make the motion, or is everybody fine with approving the minutes?
I'm not able to pull them up.
Click on agenda.
No?
There were the 2 of them.
Oh, yeah, excuse me.
There you go. Now hit the documents.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
I guess I wasn't even on the committee. Yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, you should have been on it by this time.
February, not a,
Oh, no, right not February.
you guys were slow last year.
That's right. It was kind of a off year.
Well, I guess my memory fails. It amounts to a 6-month period, but
Weird.
We can table it too if you want more time.
Pretty sure I was.
Doesn't have to approve them tonight. That's totally fine.
Oh, so March, I wasn't even
Yeah, I think it was.
chosen yet.
Yeah, it looked like it wasn't until April.
Thanks.
Right.
Okay, well, if you guys want to look at them some more, we can push it off till next meeting.
That's fine.
Okay. So we'll table item 4A, approval of minutes till February.
Yeah, doesn't look like it's a problem though.
And next item is public comments on items that are not on the agenda. I think everything that we have is related to the heritage tree item, so unless there's another.
I haven't finished filling it out yet.
Okay,
I'm working on it.
okay, great.
Good evening, committee members. Denise McGriff, resident of Oregon City. And I am here tonight to just briefly thank you in advance for the work that you're going to be doing on the ordinance that will deal with trees on public property. As you know, we've had a few incidences, and I'm not speaking about the most current one, but over time, we have had issues with trees being removed in our community, not just on public property, but on private property. And I'm not suggesting at this point in time that we look at that, but I think what I wanted to say was that I think we either have a lack of understanding in our community, or some forgetfulness in our community, or basically just plain I'm ignoring what the rules are in our community. And people have been unintentionally giving trees severe haircuts, which is not healthy for the tree, chopping them halfway down and leaving them. And unfortunately, a lot of this work is occurring on the weekends. So, we're a little vigilant in the McLaughlin neighborhood. If we hear chainsaws, people start coming out and figuring out what's going on. But I just wanted to thank you in advance for your work on that future item. And I today received a copy of a letter that was sent to you that came from the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. So I'm assuming they have that or will have it.
They will have that. I was going to give them a briefing on where we're at right now.
Okay, so I got that today, and that's the reason why I thought I'd better come and just say I had seen that, and I know that they have the letter stated that they are interested in assisting you in that work, and I know that in talking with some of the members of the Berkeley Hills Neighborhood Association, they are also interested in doing some of that work with you as well. So I'm hoping that this will get brought up to CIC, and some of the other neighborhoods will step up where there are concerns about trees, or concerns about adding trees into their neighborhoods, because as we know, they are very important environmentally, socially, and they provide a lot of well-being. I know there is a cartoon in the paper, it's called Rose is a Rose, and she's got this Let Me Be tree that she leans on many times to bring her back to reality and ground her. And I always am amused when I see that in the comic strips, where she's just leaning on the tree and, just sort of getting herself together there. So, there's obviously some importance in the cartoons in the paper as well. So thank you very much. I appreciate
I want to
your
thank the City Commission too, though, for pushing through the changes in the heritage tree designation, because I think we only had a total of 6 nominations before that got changed, and I wasn't aware until Nancy mentioned the number of them that have come in since that has. So I think it's pretty obvious that the restrictions that we had was an impediment for people to come forward. So I appreciate the City Commission actually adopting that code change.
Yeah, we wanted it sooner than later, but we got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. The presentation that we were going to have from Audubon has been postponed until March 11th, so we'll be having that. We may have other presentations before then, obviously, but that one's no. So we don't have any presentations this evening. And then we'll be on to general business. The first item up is the Heritage Tree nominations for 2019. So I'm going to put the screen on. Okay, great. So we have 3 nominations on private property, and we will be reviewing 2 nominations on public property, but not at this meeting because we've got some additional work to do before we bring those before you. I would anticipate we bring those ones in February. Those ones also have to go to PRAC because they're in public parks as well. So the first 3, I'll go into. I have a short presentation, and then we have lots of folks in the audience, it sounds like, so that's great. And this is what I've got is a summary, a very brief summary of what is in your packets. So, technology. First nomination is 901 Lynn Avenue for Sugar Maple, Acer Saccharum, and the estimates for diameter of 42-inch diameter, height of 68 feet, and spread of 53, estimated age of 80 years. The owner of the property is Janine James, and the nominator is Dee Dee Dalzer. I've got some other pictures of this. So this first photo is of the intersection of Lynn and Holmes.
Okay.
And this is looking northward down Lynn Avenue. The tree is on the right there on the corner in this shot. Beautiful sugar maple. And this is the shot looking west down Holmes at Lynn. So
right
it's
through it.
clearly
Yeah, it is.
visible from public right-of-way, and that's the first nomination. Second nomination is for 810 Jackson Street, American Sycamore, Platanus occidentalis, estimated diameter 61 inches, height 40 feet, spread is 60 feet,
Love it.
and the age between 212 to 244 years. And I think Dee Dee can explain to us the app that they were using to estimate these trees. And the owners of the property are Brian Carrier and Gretchen Nation McKillop. I hope I have that right. And nominator is Dee Dee Dalzer. This is a shot of the tree in the yard. This is another close-up of the trunk on that, and it's pretty amazing. And this is the Google Earth shot of the tree in the summer, which that it's one house in from the corner there.
The backside.
The third nomination is for Northern Red Oak at 412 Locust Street, Quercus rubra. I remember I could see this tree from my old office window
Okay.
on Moala, I believe, because it's so prominent. Diameter of 53 inches, height 90 to 100 feet, and spread of 105 feet, estimated age 221 years. The owner of the property is Corinda Ingebrigtsen, and she'd like, if this is nominated, to have the plaque read in memory of Shirley Ingebrigtsen, her father. Nominator is Dee Dee Dalsrud. This is a shot of the tree in the winter, and a close-up of that tree. So it is huge.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 that we have. The heritage criteria listed here. at least one of these criteria must be met in order to be nominated. And then the site and condition criteria listed here, and those criteria must be satisfied in order to be nominated. And all three property owners have consented to the nominations. So that's everything I have. And leave it up to the committee to make the decision on those. And you're welcome to have folks come up and talk about it.
I think we all know Dee Dee. I would like, I would actually.
Will.
But I'd like to have the owners at least introduce themselves, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Then tell us which tree it is, and we can bring it up and look at it again.
Brian Carrier,
I'm Gretchen Nation. That's our tree.
the one on Jackson Street. Just a little background. In 2010, we were looking for some place to move in together, and we've been very fortunate to have the means to pretty much move or buy any house we wanted. And we chose Oregon City because of the history, the historic homes, and the gorgeous trees here. And we'd actually put money down on another house when our real estate agent showed us this house, and the tree sold us. It's a spectacular tree except for the leaves in the fall. we made anything else. And I just feel it's really important, to maintain the character of Oregon City. We get a lot of visitors from all over the country, and things we hear about always are the historic homes and the trees. So I think it's important to protect these trees and to teach the kids that, these are valuable. These trees are almost as old as our country. So I think it's really important we protect the trees as much as possible. So
We'd really love to see the fine for cutting them raised tremendously.
yeah, $600 is nothing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I live
Loudly.
I live on the corner of 8th and Jackson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got the black walnut.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I live on Van Buren at 810, so.
Oh, okay.
I delivered-
We've gotten your mail before.
Yeah.
I delivered your Amazon package yesterday.
Yeah, we get 810 Jefferson all the time. Yeah.
But I have loved that tree forever, and I have just,
Yeah, it's a beauty.
I have been so worried in the whole time I've lived in my house that somebody would move into your house and cut that tree down because of the leaves.
Oh.
And I'm just like, please don't cut that.
Yeah, no, we just got another bid, and it takes us months to get them all up, but we get them up.
Well worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it. Yeah, it's a beautiful tree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Another property owners here?
We would like to come up for Lynn Avenue. Or not Lynn Avenue.
The oak tree.
Well, you nominated all three, so,
I'm going to let you speak. My name is Dorothy Dalsford, live in Oregon City, 4 blocks up from this tree, and
My name is Carla Laws, and I'm coming here as Barclay Hills Neighborhood Chair, and I'm also coming as a resident. So I live on Roosevelt Street.
at Little Peak is her house in the very far back, and that's her alleyway, and that is her backyard tree.
Historically, my house isn't registered historical, it's old, but it was a birthing house at one point for unwed mothers, I've been told, in the 40s and 50s. And behind it is Corinda's house, and her house is historic. And so she's excited to finally have this tree a part of that, so.
Anyway, somewhere in her archives, she has a picture of her father hugging this tree. Of course, I want to see that, but she couldn't come this evening to come and celebrate her own tree.
She's single, she's over 70, so it's kind of a struggle for her. And for a long time, she was advised not to have it as a heritage tree by not neighbors, but particular people she was associated with. So she was a bit scared at first, but we had talked about the code and what it meant. Historically, that particular tree, she has lived there since the 50s. So she moved to the house when she was 6 years old and her parents owned it. She remembers as a child, about 58, being swung on, or even before that, being swung on the branch of the tree, because low enough there was a wooden swing that her dad attached to a branch, and she was swung on that tree with her brother. So it's very sentimental to her. Her dad loved the tree, and that's why his name was Shirley. So it's very important for her to preserve the tree. And on top of which, Barclay Hills Neighborhood Association itself has a tree resolution we voted through and passed in September 10th, 2019, that we want as many trees preserved in our neighborhood as possible, especially on public land, so that we're wanting as a neighborhood for that to happen. So, yeah, and I know Corinda, this is like a memorial for her father, so it'd be very special for her to have that.
It's a magnificent tree.
Yeah, I'm very blessed it's behind me, and it attracts eagles, birds, snails. We have lots of frogs. I've seen bats fly through there. And there's certain parts of the day, like between 10 and 12 or 1, sometimes 2 o'clock, you'll see flocks of birds.
Murders of crows. I have seen so many on days you'll go, oh, that's got to be 20, 30 birds leaving. And then another group of 20, 30 birds leaves. And another group of 20, 30 birds leave. I've seen 2 blue herons climb in that, and they cause such an array.
Wow.
Because you're going, how do those great big birds get in there? And they do. And they sat there for an hour, and then they both left. And you could so see it. I've seen eagles land in that tree.
Yeah.
It brings me to tears. The other day when we had a high wind, this tree didn't even break during the Columbus Day storm.
Right.
It held steadfast.
It had one little branch, and I don't even know if it was from it. Was that
Yeah.
my back?
Yeah, I mean, and this tree on the other day when there was a high wind, you could barely see the tops of our pines moving, but that tree moved 4 feet either way, either side, and then it spirals in there, and it's just looked like it's shaking its hair. You can watch on a windy day during fall. Those leaves blow 4, 5, 6 blocks. They just lose sight. They just blow
Everybody loves
away.
a tree then.
This tree deserves such on our knees and bowing to it. It makes me cry more than 2 and 3 times a year, just from beauty.
I'm very lucky to be right behind me, so.
That's an actual view from my bedroom to see that tree.
Well, and that it's attached to a property that's historical and actually registered with the city. So that's like a huge thing too, that tree was there even before the house.
Yep.
So,
Just so confused, the house is the next door house, is that right that you're talking
right
about?
behind me.
Right behind you.
That particular one.
Now, I don't know if you know it, but you can nominate your house to be on the Historic Register of Oregon City.
I would love to, but I know that there's certain things that need to be done on it first.
Oh, I see.
And it's never technically been, but of course I would love that if I could. Yeah, because there's a lot of history there. I've been going back and looking at the history just of our street and what houses, tied to certain properties first. So I'm trying to suspect that my house particularly could have been moved in 1925 because I'm looking at the old city maps and it doesn't appear on the map till 1925, but the house is dated 1916. So, and the house behind me, I think, her house is like early 1900s, before 1912.
It was 1910, if I'm not wrong. 1912 was mandatory
Yeah.
registration in Oregon City, I think, at 1910 to 1912.
They moved a lot of houses in Oregon City.
Yeah.
I have a Oregon City postcard collection, and I've got, I don't know how many pictures of houses being moved, and there's one big house on 7th Street that I've got a postcard of it, and it looks like it was 2 blocks down and turned 90 degrees the other direction. So it had to be, it's exactly the same place. Somebody had to move it a couple of blocks up the hill. I'm like, I mean, the McLaughlin house was moved. They just moved stuff all over the place.
Well, and my house position, if you look on the map, is at a kind of an angle, and so is my garage. Like maybe it was placed and moved because it's not perfectly straight, but obviously things weren't done perfectly straight anyways back then, so.
I live in an old house. There's nothing plumb or level at my house, so.
Mine actually is level, I'm shocked. Like I can actually.
It was moved in.
My old house was not.
Yeah, things roll.
I was on Division
Had a
Street for
water
years
leak and
too.
things into the back of the kitchen.
All right, well,
Anyways.
thank you for your time on
Yes.
talking about that.
We can get distracted.
Yeah, squirrel.
And of course the one on Lynn Avenue, because
Lynn Avenue is extremely special. That was actually the cornerstone of the very first neighborhood district. Denise, maybe you can chime in on that particular corner. Wasn't that the corner of the very first neighborhood district that was established in Oregon City? On Lynn Avenue? Sorry. So I might be spewing misinformation, but I thought that corner was one of the very first neighborhoods that were drawn out, so I could be spews of misinformation. But Judge Ron Tom grew up in that house as a child, and he said that he used to have a swing, that he used to swing from that house. So the age of that tree is really underestimated, but that would be what it would calculate out to. But Judge Ron Tom is probably about 79 years old himself, so. It's a spectacular tree, and the woman dearly loves it.
We could.
It looks pretty.
I got a tree corner.
And this nomination was submitted in 2016, but.
Yeah, that was I thought it was 15, February 15th.
Right. and-
Yeah, so this is how long this has been sitting on a desk. So, round of applause for NRC changing code. And I meant to come up for public comment, but I won't spiel into that,
Okay.
because we know how I am.
Janine is not here, I take it. Is Janine here?
No, she is not.
Okay.
I think she's out of town.
Okay.
I sent her a postcard, and she was out of town when I went in to talk with her, and so we discussed it on the telephone again. I said, it's coming up. I sent her a postcard, so I think she's fully aware of it. She's just in and out of town a lot.
Okay. Well, thank you. Do we want to make some, vote
Well,
on?
you can vote on each one individually, or you can vote for all three. It's up to you.
They're all good.
They're all good.
I was vote for all three.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Formal motion?
There's public testimony.
Yeah.
I gave you a slip.
Oh, sorry. Trent? Yeah, I gave it to him. So,
okay.
yep.
Can you come up?
And Roger. Yeah.
Oh, these are for
I'm
heritage
going
trees
to come
too
back for
also.
public testimony.
Yeah, please come up, Denise.
Thank you.
It says item 7A, which I thought this was.
Yep.
No, it is. Yeah.
Please, yeah, we'll give you 3 minutes to talk.
Roger.
Thank you. Roger Fowler Tice, resident for 27 years now and current president of the Oregon City Parks Foundation. And as you might know, some of you might know, we've been working in Waterboard Park to save the tree canopy there, which has many very large trees in it. And I'd like to commend Dee Dee Delsrud for all the hard work she's done on this, pretty much solo. Over the when working in Waterboard Park on these ivy poles to save the trees, and we've just, a lot of us have just come to understand the power of the trees. And over the course of the last year, I've learned so much has come out about trees and the importance of trees like this, the large trees and their relationship with the smaller trees and the network and how they feed each other and take care of each other. And it's just amazing to begin to understand the importance of trees this tall and their relationship to us and our environment. So thank you for taking this subject on. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Welcome.
Denise McGriff again, resident of Oregon City, and I can now claim 31 years. I am a member of the Oregon City Parks Foundation, and this is one of our brand new fabulous t-shirts, so audience, take note. You can get one from our president here, Roger. I think that it is commendable that all three of these are on the list. I particularly wanted to talk about Corinda's home. It's the, basically it's the Rasmussen Hadley house. And I knew Corinda's mother, Evelyn, quite well. Her father was already deceased by the time I got here to Oregon City, but spent many hours talking with her about the history of the area, history of her house. Evelyn and both Corinda are members of the Daughters of the American Revolution. I believe they're the Susanna Lee Barlow chapter, if I remember that correctly. So it's really interesting that at least all these trees are connected to historic sites, which, you know, preservation is like my thing. So I think it's really fabulous that these trees and their accompanying buildings are going to be forever linked together, and the amount of money that the owners have to put into keeping them maintained is commendable, and I appreciate it. And I wanted to say to Brian and Gretchen, hey, you want to have a leaf gathering party? You know, provide some pizzas, and we could get everybody to come over to your place and help break leaves. That's easy.
At the same time, we're looking at Swifts.
Yes, at the same time we're looking at Swift, so, you know, make a note of that. But anyway, so I just, as a member of the Oregon City Parks Foundation board, I just want to urge you to adopt these and pass your motion to approve these to be heritage trees, and I look forward to many, many more coming online. We have one over in our area in front of Phyllis Gehring's house, and it's a fabulous tree. Unfortunately, we lost the one in front of the Judge Ryan house, Ron Tom's property, with his daughter's living in there now, and the plaque is still there, but I understand about, you know, nature. My mother and father-in-law had a fir tree that was nominated and approved by Clackamas County as a heritage tree. And I don't know if this is an omen or something, but a year later it was struck by lightning. It was the tallest tree in the vicinity in Springwater, Oregon. And the thing burned, I mean, from the top down, and they finally unfortunately had to cut it because it was burning not only on the top part, but in the interior where the lightning struck it. And it was just sad because that was a magnificent fir tree that had probably close to 200 years old, and it was on a donation land claim. So it's just, these things do happen. But anyway, so thank you so much. We appreciate it, and community, thank you.
I just want to say one more thing because the subject of leaves has come up several times, and keep your leaves. I encourage all of you not to get rid of your leaves. They're part of this ecosystem, and they feed the trees and lots of critters underneath, and they're just, we shouldn't be hauling these leaves away. They're important to our ecosystem. Thank you.
I've got a question for our tree experts. Is the northern red oak native?
No.
I'm going to question the age of it because the Hudson's Bay Company wasn't even here at that time. So I'm sure it must be less than 200 years.
Sure that those apps that they're using for that they're plus or minus.
To me, the ages are the most suspect of what we have here, and it doesn't matter. It's a magnificent tree regardless of.
It can go either way, up and down 10% or 50.
So it's more than 10%.
Yeah, Doug, it's a good question. I just want to clarify. So we don't consider a native North American tree that's too far away in its distribution an exotic tree or a non-native tree.
No, the only thing we're with is invasive species.
Yeah, invasive.
Or the, like, you know, the tree of heaven.
Absolutely.
The worst name on the planet.
The worst name.
I know that.
Devil.
Dee Dee, did you want to come and talk again, or was that part? How about, and you, Carla?
I'm good.
Is it good? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, got our input.
I move that we push all three of these trees forward to become heritage trees.
Yeah, and I would like to second that.
Okay. All right. Doug? Aye. Trent?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Congratulations. We'll take these to the city commission.
Now, can I say one thing? Because now that they're nominated, you have to go.
That's up to the chair.
Yeah, keep it short.
It's Dee Dee, come on.
I can never promise. I'm so bad. Since these three trees have been nominated, I think they're going to be given honors on Arbor Day. And Arbor Day is on a Friday this year, and sometimes our city moves days around, and it would be really nice to see a nice Arbor Day celebration. I think they're planting a ginkgo tree down at the end of the Oregon Trail from the Hiroshima, and it'd be really fun if we could make a big celebration of this. If this is the case, I'm your committee. Thanks.
Thank you. Talk to me about that so I can coordinate. All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Next item.
Next item.
Forest Edge Apartments.
Yeah, 1 second.
Which way we go? All right.
And okay, so just give you a little background on this application. And we also have Brian Lee of Pace Engineering who's here, who's come tonight to answer any questions you might have about this application. But I'm going to give you a brief summary. This is a land use application for geologic hazard, site plan and design review, and natural resource review for stabilization measures, a new internal roadway connection, and general site work at the lower campus of the Forest Edge Apartments. The primary goal of this application is to remove water from the hillside and provide an emergency access route for the existing development. In 2017, the owners installed dewatering wells, and those wells are taking water off the site, and they have 2 years of data showing that these dewatering wells are working and keeping the site dry in the wet season. And no additional slide activity has occurred. This is a type 2 review, meaning it's a limited land use decision based on the criteria in the code. The City Commission has called this item up for a public hearing on January the 15th, 2020. And the staff and City Commission review is limited to the applicable criteria. The staff report for this was published today, so for the January 15th meeting, there is a staff report that's been published today. And if the applicant fails to meet the applicable criteria and a condition of approval can be added with specificity to show compliance, the city is obligated to include those as condition of approval. This is the location north of Beaver Creek Road. The apartment complex is divided into an upper campus and a lower campus. We're talking about the lower campus. Primarily. This is a closer up aerial view of the site. And so just want to go in a little more detail on each of these applications. So the site plan and design review application is going to principally be looking at the new service road connection and fire truck. I'm going to show you a graphic for that, fire truck access. There's no additional work proposed for the parking lot and site. The geologic hazard review, which is done with peer review from the city's geologic engineer, Tim Pfeiffer. They're principally looking at Chapter 17.44, which is our geologic hazard overlay district, and an engineering staff is responsible for that review. They're looking at the dewatering wells, the underground stormwater detention system, and the new impervious surfaces that would be proposed. This is a graphic we can refer back to of the locations of these dewatering wells, and there's a picture I'm going to show you of what one of these looks like. They are linked together by a pipe, which goes to a collection facility.
Are these the squares we see?
Yeah. And most of those are located in existing impervious surfaces, but I think the overall new impervious area due to these dewatering wells totals about 70 square feet. There's also a proposal to take the existing stormwater outfall from that site, and I'll show you currently where the existing, so let me see here. You can, on the bottom, if you look at the screen, I'm going to point to where the existing location for the stormwater is right here. And Brian can speak a little more specificity about this, but there's a drainage here, and they're planning to relocate the stormwater that comes off of this site into an outfall that goes into this drainage. And that is a part of their stormwater management plan. And I'll just refer back. So this is the plan graphic. So what's proposed is a series of underground tanks, which have a pipe that leads from the underground tanks underneath the existing parking lot, and then drains to an outfall to the west of the site. Now, with respect to the Natural Resources Overlay District, the engineering for this site is such that the engineers recommended that outfall go directly as close to the creek as possible. And under the emergency hazard exemption in the NROD code, that type of hazard exemption does not require further NROD review, but there are other aspects of the Natural Resource Overlay District that do trigger some mitigation. So they will be doing some trenching or excavating or underground sleeving in order to make the connection to that outfall and reseeding with native species any disturbance in that area. With respect to these underground tanks here, this row of 3 tanks, as I understand it from talking to Christina, will be located underneath the existing impervious surface of the parking lot. And this row here, it would be new and limited to no more than 1,000 square feet of additional impervious surface for which they will be required to mitigate under the NROD code. And let's see. So as far as the Natural Resource Overlay District goes, the other aspect of this is because their engineering is recommending taking as much water off the site as possible, they would like to not have to do standard irrigation, because the irrigation pipe, that a permanent irrigation system would be set up, or a drip system, cannot be monitored adequately. If a pipe breaks in the middle of the night or is cut or freezing or something and starts dumping water onto the site, we've seen this problem before in the same location. And rather than have that kind of system set up, they would have to propose a different type of irrigation system, but they still have to show that after 5 years, there is at least 80% establishment of all replanted mitigation plantings there. So they'll have to come up with some sort of a approach to irrigation, either through those bio bags or some sort of hand watering technique that will allow them to do that. And that's going to need to be proposed in order to meet the establishment standards in the NROD code.
Pete, is the land ownership the same as the HOA or the condo owners?
Sorry, I didn't talk about that. The owner is RJL Holdings, which is an Oregon City company. And I'm not familiar with the owners, but Brian can speak to that. So sorry about flipping around here. This is the existing NROD overlay that we have adopted, and you know it covers a big chunk of the lower campus and the drainages that go down into Newell Creek Canyon. This is a close-up of the service road connection that's proposed. So what was done when the slide happened and the site was evacuated a couple years back, this section of road here was decommissioned essentially, and what they're proposing is to reconnect that loop road back up, and that is new impervious surface that requires mitigation under the NROD code as well. So the NROD report that they've put together is embodied in a set of plans and in a narrative. Because the NROD code is written to be clear and objective for residential development, if you look for an actual NROD report with a lot of detail in it, it doesn't really get into that level of detail, but all the code requirements have been discussed in the narrative, and the application and mitigation approaches were put together by an environmental professional with Pace Engineering. So, and this is the final shot I have, which shows an example of a dewatering well.
Right.
Just going back through the review process, so it's a type 2 land use decision. There's going to be a hearing on February 15th, clear and objective criteria in the code, and any comments that you give to me today, I was planning to relay those in writing to the reviewing planner, which is Christina. If you want to designate a member on the committee to review what I've written, to assure that what I've written is an adequate recollection of any comments you make, those will be part of the record. Whether you want Trent or Doug or any one of you to do that, you can just say so at this meeting, and then I'll send, my written comments to you before I send them along to Christina. Okay, and that way they'll be part of the record. And that's all I have. If you want to ask Brian to come up and talk.
Yeah, I've got some questions.
Sure, yeah.
The dewatering wells have been there since when?
I believe 2017. Yeah.
So you've only had 2 years of information on it.
Yeah, I would defer to the applicant on that.
Now, my question is that those wells, are they periodically pumped out?
I don't know. Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, come up and.
If you come up, because I think this will help us in terms of.
Sorry, I fill out this form, my pen.
Yeah, you can give that to me after.
I'll give it to you afterwards.
Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Brian Lee. I'm a civil engineer with Pace Engineers, and I'm one of several members of the design team that have been working for the owner, Jameson Luther, or JL Enterprises, is the current owner of the property. They bought the property after the event of 2015 that we all talk about, which is the abandonment of the lower campus. They bought this property with the whole goal was to, and they priced it such that, hey, this could be an opportunity here if we can fix this problem. And so that's what they did. They went about hiring a very good geotech engineer. They looked at all the past geotech reports that were done way back in like late 90s when this development was approved, and a majority of the geotech engineers said the same thing. You need to dewater the site if you want to stabilize the slope. And so that's what they did. They drilled 14 dewatering wells, and they are continuously pumped 24/7. So there's continuous water coming out of the dewatering wells currently. And the good thing about it is that the water level has been dropped to, and please don't hold me to an exact number, but if I'm remembering, Eric Staley is the geotech engineer. He said it's 10 feet below the historical low summer level. So we're not even seeing a winter high level of saturation of the soil. It's 10 feet below the summer. And in the summertime, that site never moved. It was stable. It only moved during the high level winter rain events when it got super saturated. And so we've been very confident that we've stopped the landslide, and we have the historical data to prove it. There's inclinometers around the site that show literally no movement at all, and the whole hillside has been completely stopped from moving.
So when you dewater, when you pump those out, where does the water currently go?
Currently,
into that drainage that was described before?
Yes, there's a little side drainage here that's kind of between the upper and the lower campus, and they plumbed the discharge out to the creek there. But that's not going to be its permanent discharge location. The permanent discharge location is when we go in and fix the pavement, and we fix the stormwater system and install the underground tanks that Pete described to you and showed you. The outfall will go down to where it was approved with the previous approval, down to the other side creek. Both of these are kind of side creeks of Newell Creek. They're kind of unnamed little side channels. And so we're going to go tie in the dewatering wells on the back side of where the control structure is. The control structure sits on the downhill side of the detention tanks to limit the flow out so that it meets the stormwater code. It has an orifice plate that restricts the flow, but the dewatering wells aren't part of that since they're groundwater. They'll be inserted past that control structure and go out to the creek.
So both the dewatering and the stormwater will eventually go to that.
They'll both be discharged at the approved outfall location from the
You mentioned it was groundwater, but you say you are pumping water out of the wells
currently, yes.
currently, and that'll continue.
That'll continue 24/7.
I'll tell you, I ran for the city commission back in 1999, and I was friends of Newell Creek. We were opposed to that development in the first place, and of course you did lose apartments. Well, not you, but the previous owner lost apartments shortly thereafter. And I realized, is this going to continue to be low-income housing?
That would be a question for the owner himself. I think his desire is to create affordable housing. That's what he has said repeatedly.
Because I believe that was what it was built for, and unfortunately it was built in a place that should have never had anything built on it. I believe that's characterized as a sag, geological sag, where they, rather than slide this way, the whole thing had dropped historically in one place.
Correct. The whole mass has slid together as was one group, and only the peripheral buildings were lost, but those four that are in the center are in remarkably perfect condition. Personally, I visited 3 units in every building last Friday. I went into them and looked at them along with our structural engineer, and he was shocked at the condition. He goes, all the windows work, all the doors work. I mean, we maybe found 2 or 3 external doors that look like maybe the porches had sagged a little bit, but the structure itself, there was almost no cracking in the walls or the ceilings of the buildings. It was really amazing the condition that these apartment buildings are in. No structural cracks on the foundation they found. So they were actually pretty impressed with how well they've held up, considering how far they've moved laterally and vertically.
So they're not occupied at the moment?
They're currently not occupied, right. The event in 2015 severed the sewer line, and it's a pumped sewer, and so they had to remove the residents when the sewer was severed.
Now, how do the proposed tanks function? I mean, you have your wells, and how are those tanks integrated in terms of your stormwater management?
Those storage tanks are designed to handle the 25-year runoff, and it's going to store it in that. That's the volume that's been calculated, and then it will release the rate at the pre-developed rate. And since approval was in 1999, we use the stormwater manual from the 1999 code.
So how clean is the water that's going to be going into the creek? I mean, the groundwater should be fine.
Groundwater is very clean.
Are there like things they could put on the parking lot, like the owners, like people who park there, they couldn't have leaking oil or stuff like that?
Correct.
Because cars leak stuff.
The detention tanks themselves don't have a solid bottom. They have a filter fabric that's designed to kind of prevent infiltration, but they also tend to trap sediment. They tend to trap some pollutants, and so it's a kind of a first flush filter, if you will, of the stormwater before it gets out to the creek.
What kind of temperature variation might there be from pumping groundwater out and then letting it be in a tank and then letting it go back into the...
Well, the dewatering wells will not go through the tank. They're going to go straight out to.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Yeah, they go bypass the tanks. So that temperature isn't, and I have a feeling that when we mix the flow from stormwater events and the groundwater events, the temperature will be fairly mitigated to what's naturally there.
How deep are those wells?
I know you're going to put me on the spot on that. 150 feet, I think.
But they just release water in the normal process. You said you do pump out of the wells.
Yes, they have submersible pumps in the bottom of them, and they pump out. Pete, can you go back to that slide?
Yeah, sure.
It shows the dewatering wells. And so the blue lines interconnect all the wells. So each well has a submersible pump. It pumps up to ground level, and then it flows slight pressure, but mostly by gravity, all the way down into the creek.
And so, is there a point at which you don't pump anymore? Is that determined by the water in the wells? Like in the summertime, you're probably not pumping water out.
Correct. If they pump less.
Less, yeah.
Okay.
We want to keep that level below historical summer flows. So we're artificially lowering the natural water level and keeping it that way to control the ground.
And how are those pre-development flow measurements?
Say that again?
Are those pre-development flow measurements? You say.
Yes.
So you had information on what the flows were from before the development ever occurred.
There's been many geotechnical reports on this site, so we had very good historical data on what was there before. On many different civil geotech engineers. And quite frankly, that was the original recommendation from the geotech engineers that originally looked at this site in the 90s, dewater the site.
Yeah.
They recommended horizontal wells that would drain by gravity. It was rejected by the previous, this is the third owner, by the way, not the second. The original owner rejected it due to cost. They thought that was too expensive, and they took the risk, and we all know the result.
Yep.
This owner had a different attitude. He said, hey, I'm going to follow what the geotech engineers said back then. I trust them. They know what they're doing. And geoengineers is the one that did this. They agreed, this is what we have to do, and they came up with the vertical design as opposed to the horizontal. A little less cost, but it meant more long-term maintenance.
Right.
Well, I got a fear, maybe not so much of this site, but this will be a basis of people starting to redevelop in steep slopes areas again and say, well, we got a system that works. Of course, our position was that development should have never occurred in the first place. But since most of that land is now owned by the Metro Regional Government, it's probably not that relevant anymore. But there are still areas that are privately owned. And what I hope is that this doesn't become a case that justifies starting to put developments into these steep slope geologic hazard areas, that this is intended only to be a fix to something that was already there.
Right. And that's a good point, but what would be the bar they'd have to clear now with current code and all that? Would they even be able to do this with the dewatering wells now on something like this, Pete?
Well, it would be reviewed against the current geologic hazard overlay district standards, which have changed significantly since back then. In this situation, Brian, you have multiple geologic engineers looking at the site and a peer review by the city's engineer, Tim Pfeiffer of Foundation Engineering. I haven't seen any of what he's written yet, and I expect that will come to light at the hearing on the 15th as well. So yeah, it's a significantly higher bar, I would say.
My understanding is Scott Burns will be testifying at that meeting. He's the former department head of the Portland State's Geology Department, and he's now retired. He advised the city commission at the time to reject the developments that were occurring in the Oak Creek area, and he was ignored. But he's a very trusted person, and I imagine he'll be looking at this very closely and giving his recommendations. In any case, I guess I would personally not support such a thing, but since this has functioned as affordable housing, and we have very few new developments in Oregon City that are ever functioning as affordable housing. My hope is that that continues, but these improvements, if it weren't for the geological nature, people would love to live there because it's forested and it's a very beautiful place. And so that, I guess, is a major concern, but I don't know if that's anything that the city commission could actually address.
Well, I understand your concern for like future developments, but like, I mean, I think this has been, unfortunately it was established over 20 years ago and approved and all that. And I think the work that's being done to try to rehab it and save it now is good, trying to do something with it and make use of it. But I think the potential of somebody taking deed water wells and like, let's just go do this out and somewhere else is probably would be, like I said, it'd be such a high bar that it probably wouldn't get over it, would be, to start from scratch. So, but I think this is good to try to rehab something that's already there and save it. So.
There's no decision-making going on.
No, just any comments you express, will be advisory. And if you do have comments with respect to the development, they need to be directed towards the criteria. And I know you haven't had a chance to review that staff report, neither have I actually, but, that's where the criteria lie.
I think what you were talking about, writing up a recommend, or was it? Summary or whatever. I'd be willing to.
I've typed up a lot of what I'm hearing right now as it's being said. It's more of a crib notes right now, but I would use this as a
Can you send it to all of us?
Yeah, I can happy to send it to you all.
I will be attending the meeting, but I'll be most probably, and I'll find out next Tuesday, as the chair of the Great Oregon City Watershed Council.
Okay.
I already submitted some comments to both Public Works and to planning, brief comments of my concerns at that time. But I wouldn't be there representing the Natural Resource Committee.
My last question, so we're talking about removing a lot of water that's been there for a long time. Has there been any work done to see what kind of impact, so obviously removing that much water will dry the site, but that water has to go somewhere else, and how is that going to impact the other else areas?
That was a good question that city staff asked, and the geotech engineer and others have responded to that, and it's in the conditions of approval. Their thought was, I'm trying to summarize what they said in the emails. The water level that the wells will be draining down is about part way down, it's 2/3 of the way down the slope. So the natural water then will still get to the creeks and still get to all of the vegetation down around the creeks. And then on top of that, they said that there's nothing, that what they're doing way down below will affect the surface, 20, 30 feet. That still will be limited by the natural soil conditions that exist today. The water will still go in, saturate the upper part of the surface of the soil. The vegetation will still be able to use it in the way it is now. It's not going to create, it's so far down, it's not creating a gradient, if you will, to dewater all the way up to the surface. It's just the lower portion.
Okay, I see.
The actual groundwater level.
Okay, that makes sense.
Not the saturation level. Okay. The way it was explained to me by the geotech engineer.
Thank you.
All right.
If you have any other questions, I can leave my name and number. You're welcome to call me, email me, anybody. We can more than welcome to talk about it. I think it's a very unique site. I think the success is worth the risk when we can bring 42 units of housing online in Oregon City that's desperately needed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, so I'll send my notes to you all tomorrow, and take a look at them, and then you can respond back to me individually with any comments you want to add based on tonight's discussion. Thanks.
Yep.
I gotta hit save. Hang on. No. Give it a title. Oh boy. Okay. Okay.
All right, member reports? Is that what used to be communication?
Yeah, communication, sorry.
No worries.
Yep. I was going off of a PrAC agenda, and I like to look.
That's fine. I think I was always communications, but that works too. I guess I will.
What do you think? I mean, we can go back to the old way.
No, that's totally fine. I was just like, yeah. I guess I can start real quick. I have had communication with Marie Holiday, and she's resigning from the commission. She's got some other stuff going on and is not able to participate what she wants to. So we will have to open up that spot for another candidate.
Yeah, we'll get the word out. I'll talk to the communications coordinator, Kristen Brown, and see if we can do some recruiting.
Okay.
It's kind of a rolling recruitment process, as I understand it, which is
Okay. Because that'll make, 3 spots now that we have open?
yeah.
Total?
Yeah. So as I understand it, if you've already made the recommendation for Chris Weaver, and the mayor, if he agrees with the recommendation, would make the appointment at hopefully the January 15th meeting, but I don't know.
Okay.
So then we'd be down to 2.
Okay.
And then depending on what you decide about Devon, then we'll see.
Yeah, sure. That's good.
Do we want a date certain when we actually make the recommendation?
What's that?
Do we want a date certain as to when we make a recommendation? I mean,
sorry, Doug.
We could, now we will have 2 slots to fill once that. The point is we have 2 slots. We didn't get any additional candidates applying since, and I'm just going to ask if it's not out of order, do we want to make a decision today on the current applicant? Or do we want to hold off? And if we hold off, are we going to have a date certain we're going to make these recommendations to the mayor? I mean, we recommended a person before.
Pardon?
We've recommended already one person before.
Yeah.
And what is the likelihood?
Yeah.
We have 2 positions. We only had one additional person apply, and nobody else has when he decided to continue the application process.
Right.
So
I
do
don't
we want
really
to
know.
actually hold off on the decision? Or do we want to take action on the applicant we have now, realizing we're going to have another seat to fill anyway?
Yeah. Well, my inclination is to make the recommendations now, and just to save some time and fill the position.
So we're out of order, I guess, on the agenda, but because we're on staff and member reports. But is that okay if we?
That's fine with me. No problem.
It's really your call, but if you wanted, I could check with Katie Riggs, our city recorder, and see if there's been any other applications, but I don't believe there have. So
I'm going to move to recommend to the mayor that Devin Penny be put onto our advisory committee.
Okay. How about you all?
Yeah.
Second that.
Great. Okay. Doug?
Aye.
Trent?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Okay, I'll pass it forward.
Congrats.
Still sitting there, I mean. He's still sitting there, I mean, geez.
Yeah.
We're going to make you suffer.
That's impressive in itself.
I watched 2 more of these before I came here, so
Wow. That's a first.
The only person that watched him was my husband. Look, you're on TV. Will you get out of here?
Okay. Any other member reports?
Anybody else have anything?
Just a comment. We had the Friends of Trees come here and they announced the Arbor Day thing and so forth. And I was wondering if it was too late to nominate, and Pete was pretty sure it wasn't too late to nominate. So, so I went ahead, and I was too late to nominate. However, I came back. I asked for 3 trees, and they said no, you're out of order. But maybe we can find if there's a source of trees. I was gone on New Year's for a 4-day period at the coast with family members and came back and found 2 trees planted in my parking lot. So I was very, very happy. I didn't have to do any work because I wasn't there. So that was nice.
I assume someone was there to help you guide where they went.
Yeah, it was pretty clear where the space was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had worked the space
Yeah.
before in preparation. So.
Yeah, there was a accident in my neighborhood a block from my house, and some guy wiped out, I don't know what he was doing. He must have been really drunk and going really fast, but he wiped out the people's cars that were parked on the road and pushed them up against their picket fence and wiped out a big older tree that was in bad shape. And then Friends of Trees, I don't even think they'd been in a week, had planted 2 trees and wiped those out. And I walked by the other morning and there's 3 new trees there, so they're good.
Yeah, they're conscientious.
I was impressed.
There were some trees planted right by Singer Hill Park along Lynn Avenue that got wiped out by a car too that Parks Department's replacing. So, yeah. I have some staff updates, but I bullet pointed them, and you've got a copy of it. So I'll just run through these real quick. So as you know, we're working on a policy of notification and decision making for tree removal of city-owned property. Staff had a working group on December 3rd to talk. I organized it to talk to various people who are on crews on the ground. So we had folks from Public Works and Parks, just to get initial feedback on the idea before we even draft a policy. I forwarded that to the department heads today and Tony Conkle, just to let them know where we're at. And then the next step would be drafting a policy to bring to you all in February. Kanema Wetlands will be going to the Planning Commission February the 10th. We also plan to make a presentation to the Citizen Involvement Committee because this is a legislative action, and our policy is that any legislative actions go before the Citizen Involvement Committee. That will be February 10th. I'm reviewing the staff report, putting together a staff report for the Tyrannus Woods Park on Glen Oak Road, and we'll include your comments from the meeting. Christina Robinson Gardner, our senior planner, is presenting the Forest Edge application to the City Commission on January the 15th. The stormwater master plan updates will be heard by the City Commission January the 15th. We submitted our Tree City USA application on the 18th of December, and I put a copy of the cover sheet for that in your materials here, along with our summary spreadsheet of the departmental costs. This is one of the things that you have to send to the Arbor Day Foundation. And our estimate for per capita expenditures for tree-related activities in 2019 came out to $13.35. And the minimum criteria for Tree City USA status is $2 per capita. But by the time we factored in all the various maintenance costs by department, the Friends of Trees planting, which we subsidize with $30,000 from tree mitigation trees, we are allowed to include the costs of street tree replacement as well. So the estimate that I put together based on that is however many street tree permits we issue in a year, I put the standard tree mitigation number to that, which is about 350 based on the tree, and do the multiplication and factor that in. So it all racks up, and you can see it's broken down by Public Works, Planning, and Parks. Sorry. Siri thinks I'm talking. And so, yeah, this is based on our current population estimate, and that's where we're at. So we haven't heard back from the state forester yet, because they review all of them at the same time, but we should be seeing that too. If you have any questions or comments or ideas for improvement on submittal of these, because I kind of have a standard procedure every year, but
I don't know if I have that actually.
yeah, okay. I can get you any of this info. What else? Sorry.
This one?
So
Never
the,
mind. I'll take it all
you
back.
have it?
I'll take it all back.
Heritage Tree Code updates went into effect December 19th. We have 2 more Heritage Tree stand applications in the works. I'm working with Dee Dee to complete them. And I need to get those before PRAC and the NRC. We'll have an Audubon presentation March 11th about lighting impacts on urban impacts on birds. And let's see, Oregon City Public Works Department, Josh Wheeler, our development services engineer, is updating the geologic hazard code per state requirements. So Department of Land Conservation and Development has come out with some statewide requirements for geologic hazard code. We largely comply with those, but there's some other things that are added into that. So they'll be going forward in April to a work session with the City Commission to see if the City Commission supports going forward with those code updates. And if so, then there would be Natural Resource Committee, Citizen Involvement Committee, and other open house meetings and a legislative process for that. Oregon chapter of the American Planning Association is having a webinar called Planning for Pollinators on February the 13th. It's the first time I've seen that kind of webinar before for a local chapter. So I'll be listening in on that. And we're still working with DLCD, that's Department of Land Conservation and Development, and Oregon Department of Transportation to get our comp plan update process fully funded. The visioning process, which is going to last at least a year, would be principally funded by the Department of Land Conservation and Development Technical Assistance Grant, and then the remainder of the plan would be through ODOT, is our plan right now. And as I mentioned to Doug before the meeting started, Oregon City Public Works is still working with, to do the Scattering Canyon Watershed Improvement Project with Greater Oregon City Watershed Council. This project began several years ago. The current project manager is Bob Balgos in Public Works. And so he may be coming before you to give a presentation on the status of that. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Lots, keep you busy.
Yeah, starting off with a bang. So February, next scheduled meeting is February the 12th.
Yep.
And I have nothing further unless you got any questions for me. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody have any future agenda items that we'll talk about now?
I'm not sure at this
Is it
point.
possible to ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, come on up.
I'm Patty Webb, I live in Kenema.
I need to speak into the mic so they get it recorded.
I'm Patty Webb, I live in Kenema. I'm also part of Friends of Kenema with Paul Edgar and Howard Post. I was just curious when I heard you mention we'll be discussing the Kenema wetland, what that means. I haven't heard anything about that. There's many, many wetlands. Is there one specifically?
Yeah. So the direction that staff's been given with respect to this one wetland is the one that is on the Kenema Cottage Homes development site. And we're moving.
So wait a minute, go back. There is a wetland on the Kenema Cottages property.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And the legislative proposal is to add a 50-foot vegetative corridor to that wetland, which means it's going to become part of the Natural Resource Overlay District and be subject to the code protections in that district. Currently, that wetland is not part of the district.
Right.
So,
And a 50-foot buffer,
Yeah.
I've seen how that property's laid out and how they've used every inch. Where would that go?
well, this is what we're going to be discussing. It principally affects one property to the west that's owned by Karen Blaha, and she's come before this committee and testified about this already a couple of times. So what's coming next is the actual first evidentiary hearing before the Planning Commission. So a legislative action to change the overlay district and include the wetland within the district requires that type of decision. It first goes to the Planning Commission. They will decide whether it needs to be approved and recommended to the City Commission as an addition.
Okay.
Yeah, and then, so that's the first hearing. I anticipate there'll be more than one hearing, at least 2 hearings, one before the Planning Commission and one before the City Commission, and there may be even more than that.
Because I agreed with the mention of possible repercussions of the drainage. They mentioned basically a sump pump. It seems like if that would be something that would be implemented in Kanema, because it's historic, we have geohazard, we have NROD, we have everything.
Yeah.
Would that be something that would be considered appropriate?
Well, we have a lot of regulations. We have stormwater regulations, and then we've got natural resource regulations, and they often occur and come to bear in the same location, right? Because we've got drainages that are coming off property, and sometimes those drainages are natural, and sometimes they're man-made. And so in this situation, they had a drainage which may have been created through some prior action that the city wasn't privy to. And it created a drainage situation which created a wet situation which now is a wetland and was delineated as such. So that wasn't caught in the initial inventory in 1999, either because we didn't have permission to go on the property and didn't know about it.
Coffee Creek on my property is not included either.
Yeah, so it happens a lot, I wouldn't say it happens a lot, but it does happen. And in the vast majority of cases, the wetlands that we know of that are outside the current district may touch partially the district. And in those situations, we have criteria that says that the vegetative corridor will be expanded to include that wetland if it touches it. In this case, the wetland was entirely isolated by itself because it was an on-site delineation. And the decision, or seriously, not the decision, the direction right now is to take it forward and include it, and ultimately the City Commission will make that decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because one of the other objections that was strongly expressed about the property was the footprint. And we were told by Public Works that asphalt was a permeable surface and so was not going to be counted in the footprint. And we feel like that made a big, big difference in the approval of the project.
The definition of pervious is in our zoning code, and it is very clear.
ODOT agrees also.
Okay, right.
Okay, thank you.
Both impervious and pervious are both definitions that are written out in our zoning code, and they were written at the time that we adopted the last updates to the Natural Resource Overlay District.
But when you're planning the footprint of a property, whether you consider the asphalt pervious or not, has a huge impact.
Yeah, I mean, the types of things that could be considered pervious, I don't want to go into weeds on it, are those that are engineered to be pervious and maintained as such over a long term.
Basically, water doesn't go through it.
Right, I mean, there are pervious asphalt, but it's a specific design. It has to be maintained that way. It has to be cleaned and sucked out and all that kind of stuff.
But that could also be a mitigation factor on the property.
Oh, it could. Yeah, if it's part of the proposal and it's engineered.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. That's good.
Future stuff, anybody got anything for next time?
Let's see. Well, I'll be giving you some updates on Kanema wetlands, sounds like.
Okay.
So, yeah, and there's probably, we'll have the heritage tree stand proposals, which will, I think, we'll bring those to you and then we'll either bring them to PrAC before or after.
Actually, I do have an update request to have Metro come back and talk about the trail system that they're putting in.
Oh, and you know Creek?
Yeah, and my understanding was the first phase was going to occur this year, the first phase of that development, and perhaps get an update. But there was something else. A master plan that they developed, they had thought that one of their purchases included a chunk of land that wasn't actually with the property owner, it was with the city. And
I think I know the one.
And it's come to the Parks and Recreation on that one. It's not a park, but it's land that's adjacent to the cemetery, and between that and it's either the Newell Crest or Newell Ridge developments. That segment of land is city-owned. And that might be included in the update to see what kind of progress it is. The Metro wants the property. It's not developable because of the steep slope, but some members of PrAC felt that Metro should purchase it, and but I don't think any decision was made in terms of of PrAC actually making that recommendation.
All right.
I'm just going to say Metro is going to be investing $20 million in the Riverwalk project, and it's doing that other trail system, and they're doing a lot of things for us in Oregon City, so it seems if the city can't use it and can't be developed, it probably should be a giveaway, but I don't know if we can actually make recommendations to that effect or not.
I don't know. I'll talk to Brian Vaughn and see what's going on.
Okay.
Thank you. Great. So we have at least two things from the February agenda. Now.
All right, yeah, next meeting, February 12th.
Okay, see you there. Thanks.
All right, well.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Meeting of January 8th, Metro Resource.
Thank you.
Pass the gavel to Nancy.